Without further ado, my name is Thomas Zachary. It's been a long day, and this is the newest episode of the KAAMP. That is the Knoxville Area Artist Network and Platform. And here we are with the newest guest. Will you please introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Laurel Hooker Smith. I paint, I draw, I play with clay. Um, I write sometimes, although I'm not in the habit of making all that public, but I would describe myself, I guess, as an artist.
Which one came first of all the mediums?
Um, Drawing, well, and writing too. I was like any little kid in preschool. Drawing was just something you did.
Yeah.
As like all children, making art is just something you do
Mm-hmm.
until you learn to put boundaries around it. But I think I started to it all sort of started to click that I liked to draw, and that was something um, outside the realm of normal when I was probably in very early grade school. Um, and it was what I did with my time when I wasn't in school. And it was my favorite part of being in a public school system was art class. Um, I grew up in a musical family. All my parents are both musicians. My brother and I both played instruments, and music was the entire culture of my upbringing. It was like the oxygen that we breathed. My mother is a private cello instructor.
Ooh.
So we had kids with cellos in our house all day, every day.
So lots of string music
Yeah,
bouncing off the walls.
lots of Suzuki cello variations if you're familiar with the Suzuki philosophy of music teaching, but it's very Japanese. It's very incremental. You build on foundational technical skills into like full musical artistry. So, music was kind of like the starting place for everything with me and my imagination. I had a very overactive imagination, and I used to listen to music and just draw what I was imagining, and usually there would be some kind of narrative associated with it. And I think I drew because I couldn't make movies.
Fair.
And every book that I read, I was a big reader. I was a very like dorky, introverted child who was always in her bedroom with the door closed, either listening to music or reading a book or drawing pictures, and it all kind of connected.
Mm-hmm. So it all made sense, just different lenses on the same problem.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
So, when did you start taking your creativity seriously?
Um, Taking it seriously.
Yeah, because it's fun, but then
Yeah.
what?
I think when you're like a precocious child and adults give you validating feedback about the things you create, it sort of creates the incentive to do more and better.
Mm-hmm.
So, my early years, I think probably when I was in middle school, and we were taking art classes, and I was in this very small, like fledgling private school that's now much larger. It's the Episcopal School of Knoxville, but at the time there were like 7 kids in a class. It was very intimate and like.
I come from a school with small group
Oh,
sizes,
really?
but that's drastically
Yeah, it
small.
was like really small. It grew as I, advanced through to like seventh and eighth grade. Then we had like 20 kids in a class, but it was really insulated and very like a very protected little cocoon.
Mm-hmm.
I had a lovely art teacher, Mrs. Gibson.
I was going to ask if you remembered their
Oh,
name.
yes. She had the most beautiful handwriting, and she was so sweet and gentle. And I think wherever you are, Mrs. Gibson, I
Shout
don't know
out.
what happened to her, but I remember it so vividly, drawing in her classroom and getting a little bit like more serious about it, really wanting to push myself technically, and
Mm-hmm.
it was also like kind of one of the only things I felt really confident about at that age. It's
Because being a kid is really hard.
it is,
It's
yeah.
really hard.
Yeah, I think I spend a lot of time in my art practice kind of unpacking the past, to be
Hmm.
honest. It's something that I'm just fascinated by the human psyche and kind of like um, how like conditioning informs who we become, and um, so I think a lot about that. But yeah, it was tough, and I think like many sensitive children often find solace in creativity, and it's even kind of a coping mechanism in many
100%.
instances.
In my
So
life, absolutely, and I will
yeah,
admit it any day. Like freely, no shame. I definitely use art as a coping mechanism a lot
yeah,
in my life.
yeah,
Absolutely.
for certain. So I think it was just my safe place. It was my escape, and the more I did it, the better I got, and the more comfortable I felt doing it, and it was sort of something I could hang my hat on.
Hmm.
Like um, it felt good to be good at something. Which of course later in life that leads to a
That's
whole
double edged
other
sword, double edged sword, slippery
yeah,
slope.
yeah.
Oh God.
You know where this is going already.
Yeah.
Like so
What was the subject matter back then?
mostly kind of illustrative like character drawings. I was a big anime nerd. So I had like a whole sort of like universe of people living in my mind that I
So
used to
still sort of tied to literature and forms
yeah.
of. Okay.
Yeah, I was getting like very into manga for I think my middle school years. By the time I made it to high school, I realized like it's like if I want to actually like make friends and not be
Need to put the book down every so
yeah,
often.
I probably need to like separate myself from this thing, which now in current time, I feel like anime and manga is not quite the like social suicide that
No,
was
it's
considered
definitely
in the
perceived
early
differently now in
2000s.
pop
Yeah.
culture.
Yeah. But nobody had even heard of like Studio Ghibli or like, any of the things that I like shamefully in secret really loved and had like nobody to geek out about with it.
It's the worst.
Yeah. So I drew a lot of like girls with superpowers and just characters in my mind and lots of like kind of angsty chicks with weird outfits on and kind of stuff like that. But then at the same time, in parallel, I was trying to actually develop like real sort of technical chops with drawing. And one thing I really loved about manga was just how much kind of respect was paid to details, but they were never extraneous detail. It wasn't like opulent or showy. It was the kind of this very Japanese like precision, and I
It
loved the quality of line in the drawings and
what served the story and the image and nothing more, nothing less.
exactly,
Yeah.
yeah. And in manga, it's all about um, efficiency, moving the story visually.
Hmm.
So um, even though I don't really read manga and I don't really watch anime, in my adult life, and I haven't for a very long time, it's still kind of that um, quality of like graphic containment I find very appealing.
Sounds like it definitely made an impression on
For sure.
you.
Yeah.
Because we're here now talking about it.
Yeah, it's funny the things we wind up talking about.
Well, do you want to let's dig that rabbit hole a little bit? Do you find any like hierarchical or compositional inspiration in your pieces now from that source? Is there anything you can look at and be like, oh man, that's sort of paneled in a way that moves the eye or narrates a bit?
Yeah, I think so. I always am drawn to a narrative. Um, maybe like something that just sort of raises a question, even if it's not strictly a narrative scene. I think having an element of storytelling in an image is always something that I gravitate towards. And when I am collecting source material, if there's some inkling or glimmer of like a story, that's usually where something kind of clicks for me. And also, the way that I construct images is very like flat, kind of planar. I struggled for a while, going through art school and everything, trying to be this really painterly painter until finally I realized I just really love to draw. And I think that that has always been the truth. And so, yeah, some of my images can be kind of flat and graphic looking. I think it hangs around in there.
It's been kind of neat through these series of conversations I've had, trying to figure out what people's version of their painterly painter idea is about themselves, because
Yeah,
everybody has an idea of who they are as an artist, and then the things they execute literally as the artist that they are kind of two different things. So
totally.
the contrast between those two ideas of a person is kind of entertaining in a way that some people are really spot on with how they gauge
Hmm.
the idea and themselves, and then some people have a very vastly different points of ideas for
So is this your
themselves.
way of telling me I'm totally off base?
No, no, no. I'm bringing attention to the contrast of opinions that I've received,
Yeah,
and it's been very entertaining. I
I'm
don't know if
sure.
that's good or bad or reflects on me in some way.
No, I think
It's definitely
artists are
been
just, we're kind of a delusional bunch. So,
it's definitely been comforting to discover some of these things, because
uh,
I think I fluctuate quite a bit on that spectrum myself,
yeah, yeah.
depending on the day.
Well, and it's always changing too,
Hmm.
you know. What
So
I think is true one day, the next day when I go in,
it doesn't work
like,
anymore.
yeah.
So what's a good creative day look like for you?
Oh, that's a good question.
It's one of my favorites.
Today was a good one.
Ooh, tell me about
Um,
today then.
well, my husband and I are starting our garden. We've slowly, incrementally learned to garden since like deep pandemic 2020 when everybody was,
Yeah.
you know,
Everybody was either learning to bake
baking
bread or starting their
sourdough
yard
and
gardens.
starting their gardens
Yeah.
and getting house plants. We were no exception. Um, yeah, so this morning I raked out this dirt that we've been composting for years now. It's finally like this gorgeous black loamy soil. I'm very, very proud of it. And we watered the plants, and then we went to Ace Hardware and bought, a tool my husband needed because he's trying to rig up this hydroponic solar powered like water system for this
There
little
you go. Get them,
greenhouse.
Haas. Yes.
Yeah. So he's been running to the hardware store like every other day, and I just bought like, some extra strawberries we don't really need, cucumbers because I want to start pickling things. And so I started the day outside, which I think is really the best way to start any day.
Get your feet in the dirt.
Yeah.
Barefoot.
Touch grass,
Yeah.
as they say.
Excellent.
Um, yeah. And we had a really nice breakfast. I was not hurried. I think the way you go to the studio sometimes can really be important. So I took the long way. I took a bunch of snaky back roads through
Nice.
South Knoxville and got stuck in traffic on the way over
Uh,
here. But I
thanks,
listened.
Marathon.
Yeah. They had Gay Street closed off, but I listened to like some good music and just kind of chilled. I think um, I'm really prone to kind of looking at my time off as like this, almost like in a pressure cooker, because it's like you get 2 days off a week. So
Oh, so
you
this
have
is
to,
when you have to do the things.
yeah, exactly. So I'm really trying to untrain myself and just kind of give the man the finger for 2 days a week,
There you go. Yes.
just enjoy being a human. So I think I did get to do that, and then get to the studio, clean up a little, set my things in place, wash the mugs that had like crusty ancient coffee like coagulated in the bottom, water the plants, kind of
get into it. Settle
yeah,
into
warm
the
it up a
space.
little bit, yeah, and then finally get painting. And yeah, when I start painting, it's like 2 hours, 3 hours, 5 hours. It doesn't really compute.
All
So
of a sudden, you're
I'll just
hungry and you don't know what time it is. Yeah.
yeah,
That sounds like a really good day. So
yeah,
that was
it was
today.
good. That was today.
What are you working on today? If you
Sure.
wanna tell.
Yeah, I'm working on a larger. Well, I'm working on a couple of different paintings actually, but the one that I was working on today is a large-ish for me
What
painting.
what size is that?
Like 4 by 6 feet.
Okay.
No, it's smaller than that. Sorry, that was just a a lie. It's more like 4 by 5 feet, maybe. Um, yeah. I have not made a large painting in like a number of years. I've been working very small.
So
So
you said time for another large painting.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Um, yeah. And it's a painting of kudzu.
I mean, it tastes good when you get it right.
Kudzu?
Yeah,
I've never had
you
it.
can eat it before it turns really dark
Oh, really?
because the dark leaves are really bitter because they have a bunch of iron in them.
Oh,
So you can
okay.
eat the fresh sprouted springy green light green kudzu.
Ooh.
Yeah.
So I've heard of such things, like thanks to the internet and
Yeah.
everything.
The goats, man, the goats get the dark leafy stuff.
Yeah.
We can get the light green leaves.
Yeah. I was talking to a coworker of mine. He's this like really East Tennessee like sage of the wilderness. And he was saying like the goat method seems like such a great idea. And
It is.
there's only one problem, which is that seeds from the kudzu get in goat
Yep.
excrement.
Yep.
So
But the kudzu's gone
yeah,
for a
it's
little
true.
while.
For a while. So I think if you had the presence of mind to go through and clear out all the the goat droppings.
That might be a bigger problem than the kudzu in the first place.
Yeah. Yeah.
But there is an apartment complex across the river that uses goats a couple weeks every summer
Oh,
to
that's
kill
cool.
all the kudzu.
Yeah. I love seeing them like when you catch a little glimpse out your car window and you're like, oh,
There's like
the
40
goats.
goats vertical on a hillside just munching on the kudzu.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So, would you mind to give a listener the like audio visual tour of your studio?
Sure.
Yeah. Talk us through it.
Audio visual tour. Okay.
Yeah, you know what it looks like, but you have
So
to tell
yeah,
us.
well, we are in the annex of a kind of fairly old. I mean, they say historic. I don't know what year this building was built, but it's fairly old for the area. So we're in the church annex building, and there are these really nice arched windows. And my studio is like, I don't know how to do square feet. 400 square feet, maybe. Does that sound accurate?
I'd say closer to 250.
250? Okay,
Yeah.
so it's smaller than I think it is. Okay.
It's like a quarter size of this, well, half size of this room that we're in right now.
Okay. Who cares about the square footage anyway?
Yeah, this is about the image.
I'm like getting really
head.
into brass tacks. Yeah.
Oh no, technical things.
I've got some plants in my studio and a bookshelf and a pile of all of the journals I've ever had since I was 6 years old.
Wow.
And paintings in bins, and then paintings on the walls, and some pottery. Not a ton because I'm pretty light right now. And I've got a pegboard with all my paints hung up, although those are my oil paints, which I'm not really using at the moment. And some tools and a desk where I write. And am I missing anything? You barely caught a glimpse of it. I do have a Keurig, which is very important.
Ooh, and you've got easels on both sides of the room too. I noticed that.
That's true. I've kind of stopped using that easel because it has this terrible. It's it looks really nice. It's like a wooden easel, but all of the hardware is shit.
Oh
it's like
no!
All stripped out. It's like
it's been well loved.
It was kind of crappy quality to begin with.
Oh,
they overcharge.
I was trying to hype it up
for these. You go to the art supply store and you see these glorious wooden easels, and you're like, yes, that's what I need.
That's exactly what I must have. The painterly painter
in
me needs this.
The painterly easel that it creates like this romantic picture. And really, I've yet to meet an easel that I really liked working on.
The one I have right now is just a cheapo like aluminum telescoping easel.
I think that's really the best
one
kind.
I've ever got.
It's absolutely the best kind. Yeah, I work on the wall now, but those metal easels are really
they're super light and they collapse real tiny. They're so convenient.
I gotta get one of those.
It took me forever to like own up to getting one of those and a pull behind like buggy cart thing. I was so stubborn.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, I gotta have a cart. I've got two. Everything needs to be on casters. That's very important.
So yeah, I was stubborn. It's like, no, I'm gonna carry all my stuff. And then I bought the thing and I was like, I'm an idiot. I should have had one of these ages ago.
Where do you work?
Oh, that was just for markets and such.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, in general, foolishness. But to answer the question, at the Coliseum, doing
No, I mean
lots
your
of
art.
everything. Oh, I work at home. My
Okay.
studio is at home. I have an 8 by 10 small bedroom with a closet. That is my studio.
Okay.
It tries to contain all of my art supplies.
Hmm.
Tries, usually fails, is currently failing because I have paintings in the living room and my easel's currently in the living room.
Yeah.
My easel won't fit in the studio because my work PC and 3D printers, and
Oh, you have a 3D
I have
printer?
two of
Oh
them.
my god.
One of them works and the other one just stares at me longingly, waiting for the day I choose to use it again.
Is that the printer or the computer?
uh, One of the printers. I
Okay.
have a big machine and a small machine. I use the big machine for everything now because it's a little more accurate. But
Okay. Is
um,
that just for kicks? Like, do you make things for
I
fun
end
or?
up making tools and stencils and
Yeah, okay.
stamps and prototyping stuff on it, and the I use it more for the tools and supplemental things than I do the actual finished product stuff. But I do try really hard to make unique pieces of digital jewelry,
Ooh.
and that's like opals and cut borosilicate prisms and glowy things, just wild stuff I've never
Mm.
seen before because I can, and
Yeah,
I try to make things I've never seen before all the time,
that's
and
neat.
it usually works out.
Sounds like a bunch of little treasures. I remember
Mm.
like
I've made some things that people are really proud to wear, and I can't say anything better about the scenario than that
hmm,
because I'm really happy about it.
that's a good feeling.
Yeah, I've the half a dozen pieces that are out there in the world are very well enjoyed, and that's awesome.
Cool.
Yeah, there's one in Germany, there's one in Virginia, there's some in Texas, and a few in California.
Nice. I
Yeah.
can't say I don't think I've ever come across 3D printed jewelry, to be
Well,
honest. So,
it's not everybody's cup of tea. It's a really niche
so
of a
you've got a
niche.
niche. That's good. It's good to have a
I don't know if
niche.
it's my niche, but that's where it's
You
at.
just kind of found yourself.
It
Hey, that
it
happens,
works.
you know.
But I mean, other than that, it's all uh, painting and drawing, illustration,
Hmm.
uh, and most of that happens in the studio because my desk is a drafting desk. And I move my digital drawing screen thing.
Hmm.
I'll just set it off to the side and lay all my stuff out on my desk and go to work. Spend a lot of time in that tiny room, but I have a window, and it's a
Mm.
full size window, and the blinds move all the way up and all the way down, so I get to
Wow.
choose how much of the world I want to interact with. It's
Yeah.
great. Sometimes I open the window and open the rest of the windows in the house and just draw, and it's really nice.
So you've got it made.
I don't know about that, but I've
Having a
definitely.
window in my view, it's like if you can control how much
Oh,
light
it's
is getting
luxurious,
in, and
definitely.
if it's large, of course you can't. I don't know which direction it's facing, but
It is facing. Ooh, hang on. It's.
I don't actually know which direction my window's facing.
Oh, dang, here we both are like, oh
I
crap,
think
scratching our chins.
it might be south. Mine's probably facing south. They say that north is the best.
I think I have an east facing window.
Okay.
Yeah, because it's never directly in the sun.
Mm-hmm.
But I may be wrong. I'll see when I get home. I may put it in the episode notes if I was wrong or not. But yeah, it's nice. I do enjoy it, and usually during the day, if I'm home during the day, my neighborhood's usually pretty quiet on the weekends, and it's nice. No, like the worst case scenario is some neighbor's diesel truck comes up the hill, and
Oh,
that's it. That's the
that's
worst.
nice.
Um, yeah, my studio, windows, robots, computers that are way too big.
I've got a nice view of the dumpster outside of the apartments over there, and I see people throwing things away, and then I see people coming and like excavating.
Mm-hmm.
There's this one guy I see a lot, and I can't really figure out what he's after, but he'll pick the thing that I don't think he's gonna take with him.
Oh, is this
Like
a
it's
game you play with yourself?
yeah,
Now?
like oh, he went for the not the iron like for clothing, not the metal parts, but he'll like take out like little electrical bits
Hmm.
from I don't know, maybe he's like trying to build a spaceship or something. But
Bless him. I would hope somebody beats NASA to a spaceship.
Yeah, the rate they're going these days.
We're about to put more people on the moon. That'll be neat.
Yeah.
Um, so I've noticed that a lot of themes in your work are nature, still life, observational things.
Mm.
Has that been pretty consistent across your creativity as a whole, or is that something you found your way into?
I think nature is probably the most consistent. The still lifes are really, I'm less emotionally involved in them. That was kind of the still lifes that I made in the last couple of years. I really made just as an exercise to keep busy, just sort of keep my hands moving.
Also, it's really hard to draw people.
It is hard to draw
It's always
people.
good practice to try and draw
Yeah,
somebody.
I love drawing people.
It's so difficult.
But it's hard, and
Yeah.
also it's hard to find a model. You know, it's kind of a challenge to. I think I always want to draw people I know that I'm emotionally connected to, and I like to go to the life drawing classes now and then. I can hardly ever make it, which is really tragic. But I love figure drawing. But I've kind of strayed away from portraiture. I think because Um, I only really ever want to paint and draw people that I have a very like intimate connection with, and those people are kind of few and far between. Which is why I draw my husband like over and over again.
He's always around.
He's always there. It's convenient, really.
Yeah. It's the best model. You can kind of yell at him and tell him to do this, and he'll go like that.
He's
And
normally just sleeping.
it's like, no, get back to it. I'm not done.
Yeah, go back to sleep.
Oh my goodness, what a life! It's such a luxury being a model, and for you.
Yeah,
It's
he's
like,
got it
no,
hard.
go back. How often do you get told to go back to sleep?
Sorry, you're my muse. Yeah, but
Keep snoring.
Yeah. um, yeah, nature is obviously like a. I don't even really like nature. The word nature is kind of funny to me because it, it sounds so like um, inadequate almost. You know, I just think of it as like life, like things outside. We think of it as nature, but it's really just life on Earth, the same as us, and that's kind of I try to stay connected to it.
So that's an ideological barrier you're not really a fan of.
Yeah, you could say that. And I mean, it's not like I'm exempt from thinking that way because I certainly live indoors and I certainly do live like most people. But I think just getting acquainted with some of the natural patterns of like where I live, for example, like we're very connected with the pond in our backyard and all the ducks and the birds and everything. It's just like something that.
Okay, I gotta stop you right there. Do the ducks have names?
Oh, we haven't named them. No. Well, because they come and go, and we never really know if we're getting the same bird, like
Okay,
from
that's
year to
fair.
year.
Okay.
But we do have like visitors who come year after year. We have a family of hooded mergansers, which are like these gloriously beautiful ducks that have like these big, kind of like plumage on their head, which like they call it the hood, and it's like black and white, and they're very dramatic and beautiful looking, and wood ducks. So they come back like every spring. We'll get the hooded mergansers. Sometimes they'll be like 4 or 6, but we haven't named them. We do have a ton of turtles, like an obscene amount of turtles. It's actually a little bit weird. And
that's the first time I've ever heard that sentence. An obscene amount of turtles.
Yeah, we're actually started thinking like, do we need to do some population control? Because there's like, there'll be a log floating in our pond, and there will be 14 turtles on it, easy. And there's probably like 30 more in the water. So, yeah, I don't know. I feel like it's in the fabric of my life. I don't think of it as nature. I just think of it as like
it's the rest of the stuff around you.
Yeah.
Well, I hope you now take the opportunity to perhaps name some of these ducks.
Maybe we will.
Even if you don't guarantee they're the same ducks.
Yeah.
normally folks have some really goofy names for the animals they encounter in their backyard on occasion. So,
Yeah, we have there's a cat that comes to hunt in our yard. It's not our cat, but it's like the neighbor's cat. We call it Ghost Cat because it just kind of prowls around and
in and out,
yeah,
all stealthy
yeah, Ghost Cat.
like.
So he has a name. There was a dog that we called Friendo, but Friendo stopped coming around. I think his family moved.
Mm, darn.
Yeah.
Shame. Um, what else holds your attention in the pond? And
Mm,
then you sort of carry that around in your head for the day.
the pond. Our pond is really old.
Was
It
it man-made pond or is it a natural
No,
pond?
it's a natural pond.
Okay.
I'm fairly certain it's been on the map from like the early 1900s at the very earliest. It like we got on KGIS and looked at aerial photography from like
Ooh,
1930s, and it goes all the
nice.
way back. And apparently, it was around during the Civil War.
So it's a very well-established
Yeah,
ecosystem in the pond.
it's an old pond. There's probably like bones in there, so it has this kind of magnetic energy. My husband claims he can hear it. And it makes like it makes like a really deep sonic noise, like oh, you know. We think it's kind of enchanted, honestly. So it's sort of like
So if any animals come out of this pond looking extra like they've got a quest for
yeah,
you, then,
exactly.
then
Yeah,
you
no,
might ought to say yes.
I I have a fond memory of like very deep pandemic, and there may or may not have been um substances involved. And I remember like looking out over the pond and I saw these two um, great horned owls. And like the entire sky was like vibrating blue against the silhouettes of these two owls. And that image has stayed with me it will stay with me forever because I heard them before I saw them,
Yep.
And then you look over and I saw not one, but two. And seems like there is this really like fascinating and surprisingly complex little ecosystem going on around there. We get deer, we get coyotes, we get foxes, we get gosh, there's a groundhog that lives in the ground, like right next to it, rabbits, and all kinds of birds. We've had some real surprises over the years. We had a big snowy egret came.
Ooh,
Like it was just a massive white bird.
yeah.
I thought I was tripping. Like I was like, what is that? Is that what I think it is? And lo and behold, there's a great white egret sitting in a tree in Knoxville, and all kinds of cool water birds. So it's hard not to kind of follow those threads and fall in love with the individual characteristics of each animal. And even if it's not showing up in my work necessarily, it is something that kind of it's like a nice dank sort of fertile ground for ideas, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. And, if you're not trying to be too intentional about it, you can just kick back and watch
Yeah,
and be entertained by the peaceful or raucousness of said pond.
absolutely. Every day.
It's always
Yeah.
entertaining. Always. There's always something. And if you got that many turtles, there's, wrestling matches for who's sitting on the log.
I wish I had a picture I could show you. I mean, it's quite comic. It's really, really
Are they
funny.
on top of each other on top
Yeah.
of the log?
Oh
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
they
Yeah.
stack like
Mhm.
big, medium, small. Yeah.
Turtles are the best. So, if you have those inspirations that don't really make themselves seen in your work, what sort of inspirations are seen in your work?
Hmm. Um, I seem to be hung up on invasive plants right now. So I draw a lot of honeysuckle, a lot of kudzu, a lot of vining invasive plants, because that's also present. And I don't know, especially in South Knoxville. I don't know if you've spent much time in that area, but it kind of is this forgotten land that's totally overgrown. And I didn't really realize how bad it was until I started to really like
When
get
you
out.
knew what these things were and
Yeah,
you spotted them out
exactly.
there. Yeah.
And the more you know, the more you see, of course, obviously. And
It's like the
Once you know what you're looking at, you realize
oh god, it's
all
everywhere.
the green that I'm looking at is invasive, and
It shouldn't be
it's
here.
a little depressing, to be
It is.
honest. So, yeah,
There's a tree that blooms purple. I don't remember the name of it right now, but
the
it's also an invasive
mimosa.
species of tree,
Yeah.
and it's I think it's also from Southeast Asia, like the dreaded Bradford pear.
Yes.
And
Those
screw those guys.
stinky, stinky,
Yeah,
terrible trees
I
everywhere.
didn't know they were invasive for a really long time, and then in like middle school, my mom and dad put like 10 of them around the house.
Oh,
And then
wow.
a couple of years later, when they all got big enough to fruit and started, dropping pears on the driveway and on their cars and stuff, they're like, "Why did we do this? This is terrible. These things stink. They get stuck on the cars. Gee whiz, this is a terrible idea." I was like, "You need to go ahead and cut them down then." But they look good. Cut them down. So this is the PSA. If you've got Bradford pear trees, cut them bitches down
Get rid
right
of
now.
them. Did they ever cut them down?
Yeah, most of them.
Okay.
The rest of them have since perished.
Yeah.
I think there's one left, but I'm working on that
Yeah.
one.
Yeah.
I'm putting it in their ear every time I go home. Hey, you need to kill that tree.
Yeah.
Kill it.
They really, I mean, it's funny because an invasive plant is just a plant. It's just doing
what it would do
what it's
any other
programmed
time.
to do,
It just
to
needs to do it
replicate like
somewhere else.
crazy. That's just, it's not an evil being, but yeah, don't feel bad. Get rid of those suckers.
I saw a meme about the Bradford pears. Bradford pears the other day. It said the best way to prune a Bradford pear is you get your chainsaw and go one good swipe right above the ground. And I laughed really hard at that.
Amen.
Yeah, just level with the ground.
How often do you get to do that anyway?
Not often enough,
Kind of
apparently.
cathartic. Yeah.
Yeah.
Get out there with a chainsaw.
When was the last time you used a chainsaw?
Oh, Lord.
Have you ever?
Briefly. And
Briefly.
it was probably like 4 years ago. But I think I let my husband do most of it. I do have like a cool hedge trimmer, the kind that looks like a little mini chainsaw.
Yeah.
I use that on our holly bush and makes me feel really cool.
That's an appropriate tool for the holly bush.
Yeah.
Yeah. So switching gears here for a second. What's a notepad in your phone look like? Is it chaos? Is it orderly?
It's chaos. And it's usually, I'm like a paper and pen person.
Hence
when I'm
the journals
writing.
you've had
Yeah.
since you're 6 years old? Is that what you said?
Yeah. But if this is what I use it for. I use it, obviously, if I don't have something to write with, I'll put it in my notes. But recommendations, when people are recommending movies and books and podcasts to me, it goes straight in the notes because I will forget.
Quick draw with it, just straight to the notes.
Yeah, and just random crap. Just, it's really not interesting at all. There's no like poetry or thoughts or feelings in there. All of that goes on paper.
So how many journals do you have total?
Oh, I have no idea. We could go count.
We could go count.
And that's not all of them either. I think probably it might be close to 100, but
oh, we don't have to go count that.
It's in the dozens. Yeah, there's a lot. I mean, I've had probably 2 years since I was 6. So,
okay.
And probably more than that. So, however many. Yeah.
Plenty.
Yeah. At least 60, but maybe more.
That's a good ballpark answer.
Yeah.
That's a lot. But that's also amazing that you've kept this as some sort of chronicle or like a stream of consciousness for yourself.
Yeah, I think a lot of it's just like really self-absorbed emotional venting, because that is just kind of like a function of my body. Honestly, I need somewhere to go to just clear it all out.
Is that the stuff that doesn't end up on the canvas?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's really like, I wish I were like a keen observer of my daily life, and I wrote down things in beautiful detail and like really wrote about other people and things that happened and events and like made a log of life. But really, it's just me like, talking about what I'm frustrated about.
The emotional word vomit.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Well, that's still an appropriate place for that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really glad now that I'm an adult and I don't have to worry about my parents reading it. But you're in a big old patch of sunlight over
Yeah, I
there.
know. I'm trying to sort that out. Give me just a second. Yeah, okay, here we go.
Funny.
The sun has moved in the 40 minutes we've sat here and enjoyed this conversation. So it was now staring me in the face as much as I hate it. Uh, but you have a similar issue because you also have warm toned hair and pale skin.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So I'm
yeah.
glad we have this similar struggle.
Yes. Yeah.
But I think we've found a remedy at least for now. So uh, the notepad question kind of came about organically through this process of these
Mhm.
conversations, and it's been also really neat to discover who has really orderly, nice,
Mm.
neat things, and
Mhm.
like really organizes their ideas in the heat of the moment of when they get them, and the other people that are just like, oh God, I don't even want to look at it. And I've not had a whole lot of people in the middle. I really haven't, and that's also entertaining all by itself because I
It's
ask that
fascinating.
question and then people's faces go, or you can tell where it's going by their initial shock reaction to the question, and I'm so terribly entertained, and I get the luxury to like pose that to people.
Yeah. No, I admire and fear the people who organize their thoughts and put them in. I have my best friend, for example, all the pictures that she takes, she puts in little albums on her phone and she organizes them all
I
and
only
she deletes everything
I
that she
let the
doesn't.
phone sort that out.
Yeah,
It ain't me.
mine is literally just like it's a dump. It all goes in one massive chili pot and like if I need something, I'll search for it. You know
Yeah,
what I mean?
they sound like they tag all their photos too.
Probably.
Ugh,
Yeah.
so that's time of
It's
the
like
day I'd
very
rather have for myself.
yeah. It's really
Bless them though. I'm sure that comes in real
yeah,
handy.
exactly. No, if I need something, she can send it to me. Like she's got a whole catalog. So
So there it is. Uh, do you have any bodies of work on display around town right now?
I don't. Yeah, no,
Do you
nothing at
have
all.
intentions to show bodies of work around town?
I would really like to
Yeah.
once I have enough work made.
Are
Um,
you thin on work right now? Did you
yeah.
just sell a bunch or just show or is
Um,
that just where you're at right now?
well, I've been kind of honestly, I feel like the timing of this is interesting because I've been sort of living underground for a couple of years, and when I make work, I do sell it piecemeal through the internet,
Mm-hmm.
Instagram mostly. So I wind up just getting light because of that. I don't have a backlog really. I don't have a web store. I really like, I've been very like, um, kind of living in my little cave. And partially that's just because I've had a lot going on in my life. And uh, working full time, I honestly like, I don't make a whole lot of work, or I haven't in the past few years. It's been something that I've like everything I make kind of comes out really slowly. I work very slowly and um, balancing life and making things just kind of resulted in things coming out like slowly in small pieces. But I lately have had sort of like a personal um, realignment with work and making art and being in the studio, and it feels much easier and there's a lot more to say about it, but I'm making more and I feel for the first time in a few years like really ready to like get deep into it and really dig in and make more things. I'd love to have a show somewhere at some point, um, if it's in the cards. But I genuinely I've been kind of keeping to myself, to be honest. If that makes sense.
Oh, it totally does.
Yeah.
I'm not the extrovert I seem on microphone all the time. Yeah, for sure. I
Yeah.
totally get it. I mean, I try to do 2 shows a year, but I don't always make it. So,
Mhm.
sometimes I have to curate a show with other people to have the excuse to put my stuff somewhere.
Sure.
So
Oh yeah, that's
I
a great
kind of
idea.
force myself into these scenarios on occasion.
Yeah. I've been lucky here at West Fifth. We do a group show. So I've been in some group shows over the past couple of years and other shows around at a couple of smaller galleries, and I've done a couple of markets with the pottery that I make, like little pop-ups and holiday market. But for the most part, um, I have not had like either a joint or like a solo show in quite some time. So it's been um, a goal of mine that I'm working towards.
Can I put you on the spot real quick?
Sure.
Where would you like to do
Oh, that's a good question.
yeah, that's why you're on the
Um,
spot.
yeah, well, here in Knoxville, there's so many ways to do that. I feel like so many local businesses are really welcoming and amenable to hanging work, but I think if it were to be like just a dedicated gallery space,
I mean, you don't have
there's
to narrow
only
it down that hard.
two or three. I mean, I think I'd want it to be in a gallery, like an art gallery.
I mean, that's fair.
Yeah, instead of like maybe a restaurant or
Well, I'm
cafe.
not going to shoot for restaurants or bars either.
Yeah,
I'm tired of fighting for attention in those spaces, but
yeah.
I've had fun doing things in non-traditional spaces as well.
Is there anything I should think of that I don't know about?
Ooh, I'm I've approached the Coffee Underground about doing some stuff,
Mm.
and they seem really receptive and cool with what I've presented them. So maybe live podcasts and artsy things there at some point in the future.
Oh, that's cool.
But that's an ever evolving quest to
Yeah,
find the non traditional spaces. So it's a challenge I set forth for myself.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I think we're in an interesting moment in Knoxville. It's really obviously the art scene has just utterly exploded. It's nothing like it was 10 years
Oh
ago.
no,
So I
absolutely not.
think the opportunities to show work are only going to grow and grow.
I would
Um,
hope.
hope so.
Yeah. I mean, that's
Yeah,
what I want. It's what I'm trying to make
yeah.
happen.
So I'm sure there's all kinds of creative solutions to that. I'm just sort of like just now opening the door and letting possibilities come in. Um, I think honestly, I've needed to kind of protect my space, and um, that's been what's right for me lately. And I'm actually enjoying that quite a lot, like, especially with the internet when social media gets involved in like
It
your
gets,
thought process
yeah.
really throws me off. So I'm trying to keep a distance from it. And, if you, I think I went through this moment where I thought I was going to lean more commercial. Um, and sometimes I do enjoy that. I love to make pottery, and selling pottery is incredibly gratifying. And I feel like there can be a commercial side of my mind um, that feels really satisfied by just like the sheer bounty of it, and being able to connect with an actual buyer is like a lovely feeling. But when it comes to painting, I've learned through trial and error that I just can't paint for anyone but myself. It's just not, it doesn't work for me. And I really admire people for whom, they can have sort of a business acumen and go into being an artist with a strategy involved. I
Hmm.
can't do it.
I I was I came to a similar point the other day with Joshua Shorey. So
Mm,
he and I were chatting, and we were talking sort of about the difference between like commission work and personal artwork. And the statement I ended up settling on was that the doing is for me and the done is for everybody else.
mm,
Like if somebody wants the painting, they can buy it, but I needed to make it.
yeah,
Like,
totally.
the process was for me. I needed to make it, but
Yeah,
you can certainly have it when it's
yeah.
done.
That's a great distinction for
I
sure.
it's it made sense when I said it the first time. Made sense when I said it the second time. So I think I
Guess
think I'll
it's
keep it.
true.
I think I'll keep it. But it really does represent how I feel about my particular process and how I use art to cope, or how I just literally work through ideas visually in my own head. It is a comfortable outlet for those things that serves me well.
Yeah.
So I get it when you're trying to protect the peace of your workflow. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I'm also just really impressionable. I'm so sensitive that I kind of have to put boundaries up. because I will if I get on Instagram and I look at like amazing painting after a successful potter after like, just these incredible things that I do want to see, but just the sheer volume.
Oh, that's the problem. The
And
volume is always the problem. There's
yeah,
just so much to be
can't
had.
you can't even really fully appreciate it. I know everybody's probably said this to you like 1,000 million times, but it is like it kind of gets into your bloodstream without you realizing it. Even if you think you can dip a toe in the water, the way that those apps are engineered is so vicious.
Yeah,
You know?
it's honestly malicious, is what it
Yeah.
is. But this sort of ties into the point I like digging at about how much of your work is yours versus how much of or how many of the ideas kind of come to you, and you just sort of serve the idea as a conduit into its
Oh.
final form. I usually ask people to quantify that into some sort of ratio and then scratch their chin for a second. But I will say, as example, that mine is like 60-40
Mm.
uh, conduit versus my own ideas.
So 60 is the conduit?
Yeah, my
Wow.
mind does a lot of thinking when I'm not using it. So
Uh-huh.
pictures just kind of come to my brain, and I'm just like, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I like that.
Oh, that's awesome.
Uh, well, I mean, it's usually directly tied to other things I'm toying with idea
Yeah.
wise, but
Yeah.
yeah, there are things I'm working on, and then my brain will just like spit out a ticket with some stuff on it, and be like, oh yeah, this is
Yeah.
okay. This is what it's supposed to be like.
No, I find that fascinating, that kind of like unconscious processing
Mm.
that we do. And I heard Joni Mitchell say in some interview that she crop rotates. Like she'll go from painting to writing songs to, I don't know, something else maybe.
Yeah.
And I think that um, sometimes you really do have to take your attention off the thing
Mm-hmm.
and like let it be fallow for a period of time. Just get absorbed in whatever makes sense to you in the moment.
Well, it's one of those things. I just feel like I can't be 100% that one thing all the time until it's done. Every time,
Yeah,
there
totally.
are definitely projects where you can just bulldoze through and do it, and it's done, and all of a sudden everything's great. But my pace of just life in general and my
Yeah.
creative self doesn't always work that way. Sometimes I need to stop in the middle of something and work for a few weeks on something else while my brain just sort of marinates the ideas
Mm-hmm.
I've got running around on that other thing.
Totally.
And I don't try to be too uppity about it, you know. Like
That's good.
when I get the idea of the thing for the next part I'm gonna do, then I'll go do it. And sometimes it's 6 months between when I touch
Mm-hmm.
part one and part two, and sometimes it's 3 days. Like I'll try not to stress about the how or when these things come to me. I just try to execute them as best I can when I get the ideas, no matter how I get them,
Yeah.
because at that point I've got the idea and I need to do it.
Well, that sounds like you have some wisdom acquired, because I don't think that that's something that comes naturally to everybody. That
Well,
the kind of relaxed, um,
it's frustrating.
laissez. No, that's not even the right what I'm
Don't let
trying to
me
say.
sit here and make it all sound like sunshine and rainbows. Like
Well,
it's
yeah,
terribly frustrating. Like
it is terribly
as
frustrating.
easy as that makes it
It's
sound,
easy
like
to say it.
I'm still like seeing that thing leaned up on the easel across the room, and it's just like staring at me, and I have to turn around and walk the other way, or like, it's like leaned up at the end of the hallway, or it's like collecting dust on my desk, and I'm just like, man, I haven't touched this thing in weeks.
Mm-hmm.
There are sticking points about it
Mm-hmm.
that are the flip side of that, but it's taken practice to settle into that ideology, I suppose, because
Sure.
I used to be like, oh, let me work on this until it's done a
Mm-hmm.
lot, and that's you get burnt out on stuff if
Yeah.
you really like nose down, you know.
And you rush it.
Yeah,
And it can really compromise the piece.
it
Like
can,
if you're trying
and
to push it, then it will push back.
yeah.
And then you work yourself. I'd speak for myself. I
Well,
work myself into a corner.
these are experiences I've
Yeah.
also had, and one of the pieces that I'm most proud of that I've got right now is something that took me about a month and a half to do.
Hmm.
I'd come home, work on it a little bit every day, every other day,
Yeah.
and just slowly think through what I wanted to do next. I would be adding one color or two colors every time I took a pass at it,
Yeah.
every other day or so, and just slowly figure out what I wanted to do next.
That makes me want to see your work. I feel like I saw a little bit of it on Instagram, but that's of course like
I'll show you
probably
the
just a
piece
snippet.
in particular. Folks have heard me talk about it before, so I won't. I'll tell you the whole spiel otherwise when I turn
Mm,
the microphones off.
sure.
But it is airbrush, uh, hand brush, watercolor, metal leaf, and some play with UV reactive pigments and glow powders and some other tricky stuff like
Ooh.
that. But a lot of my artwork you can see in three different lighting scenarios: this daylight, alternative light, and no light.
Oh, I love that.
So I hate, like, I was sitting around my apartment one day and I've got all this stuff up on the walls and I turn my light off and I'm like, where the hell did it go? I mean, it's useless now. I can't see it. It's the art I have on my walls. It's dark in here. It doesn't matter anymore. So I was like, well, what do I do to fix this? Well, you can make that shit glow in the dark.
That is like such an obvious and yet ingenious thing that we all just take for granted.
Yeah.
I would never have had that thought.
Well,
Never.
I
That's
mean, at that point, when I had this idea, I was really trying to explore how I wanted just like my art pieces to behave in an environment.
yeah.
And I discovered that it really bothered me when the pretty things I have to enjoy on the walls were no longer visible because I turned the lights off.
Yeah.
But once I figured out I could use different mediums to turn them into different things in different scenarios, it became a lot more entertaining.
Hmm.
It also became a lot more to think about.
Yeah, it's almost like they become a living thing.
Well, instead of painting one painting, you're painting three paintings at the same time in the same
Dang.
picture. So knowing how some of these things behave in these different lighting scenarios kind of lets you plan what they look like in the dark or what they look like under certain styles of lighting or sequences of lighting even.
Mm.
And then, in the normal old daylight or, interior lighting. So it's been a fun challenge as well.
Mm.
I think the hardest one, well, the hardest two of the three to mix, if they were to be a triangle, would be how they look under normal light and how they look under no light. Because things that glow in the dark usually don't look like the same things they look during the daytime. So that contrast is something you have to manage or at least be mindful of.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, because things that like to glow and glow really bright aren't warm colored. They're greens and yellows
Mm.
that glow really bright, and blues are really dim, and pinks and oranges and purples don't glow near as bright as greens and yellows. So
Huh.
it's just the
Yeah.
the wavelength of the light that they emit is just
Yeah.
naturally dimmer in the spectrum. So it's just something you got to work around.
It sounds like a fun opportunity to kind of pack a little surprise into each one.
Yeah, and sometimes
The
I'll be
thing that you
mindful
might
of
not.
this. Yeah, I've pulled all sorts of tricks on people that I like.
That sounds really fun.
It's one of those things where I've tried to be mindful about not putting a black light on something while I'm working on it to see if what I think it's going to look like actually ends up
Oh,
like it.
okay.
So,
So you don't test it.
well, it depends on the piece and my
Okay.
patience.
Yeah.
Sometimes I will. Sometimes, like, I'll add another layer of color and hit it with the black light to make sure everything plays with the contrast the way I want. And then other times I'm just like, no, it's going to stay on the wall and I'm over here and I'm not going to look until it's done. And there's really
Oh.
no rhyme or reason for how that happens. It's just
Mhm.
what I feel like when I get started on the piece, I guess. But it all usually ends up looking okay.
It's okay.
It's not like I've never looked at something and been like, damn, I really screwed that up by not throwing a black light on it halfway through. So yeah,
Yeah.
I can't say I'm really uppity about it in some form or fashion.
Yeah, well, it gives me a good window into what you mean when you say the process, like making it is for you. It sounds like process is a big part of what you're doing.
Well, it's where I find the peace of mind in my creative process. It's where I
Mhm.
find the zen of it. Trying to figure out what colors to use and how to layer them and what contrasts in these colors I want. Like what kind of what how I'm going to overlay these things and
Mm.
what shapes I'm going to make or embellish in general. So all of these things, I have this silly idea of like a ratio of density of detail in my
Mm.
head about Like, does this piece have too much negative space in it? Is it too full? Is it too empty?
Yeah.
How much of the canvas does it take up?
Hmm.
And on the footprint of the actual art itself, how much art is in the little piece that is the thing I want people to look at? So it's like your piece with the kudzu. It's pretty much covered
Yeah.
the whole thing. So that one's pretty dense. But if there were, less dense areas on it,
Hmm.
my brain would be like, well, this has to sort of ratio somehow with the part that's dense, and
Hey,
like
yeah,
the interplay is
sure.
is really something that
It's like some advanced compositional
that's my brain
thought.
being way too picky is what it is. It's not like
Oh, I
me
think that's
being
good.
I'm not being painterly about it. That's just like my preferences being really anal about stuff.
Well, I think it's like a form of sensitivity that you kind of unconsciously, well, I would think, I don't know. And
Well,
my paintings are all like I'm very claustrophilic. My paintings are just every square inch usually is densely packed
mhm.
with something, and I view that as an issue. It really can be composition sometimes. I struggle to allow room for breath, but that's also kind of part of the psychological space that I'm working with a lot of the time. I'm trying to evoke a feeling of um, intenseness, intensity.
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it's so interesting the way that people gravitate towards arranging an empty space.
yeah. It's
Kind of what
there's
their
there's a
natural
million
expression
ways to
is.
do it,
Yeah,
and I do it different every time.
that's cool.
it it just well, I have the idea of the basic shapes that I want to work with because I'll draw that all out in pencil
Hmm.
under everything, and then I will create lines of symmetry and then embellish those shapes and overlap and interlock those shapes with different layers. And at some point, I'm just like, shit, I don't know what else to do to this. I better stop. So once it hits that whatever magic ratio is
Yeah.
for that piece, then I'm just like, all right, well, I got it.
Do you
There.
struggle with that at all? Like, do you know? Can you feel it? You're like,
Oh, some pieces I'm just like, that's it right there,
okay,
done, kill it, no
yeah,
more. And then some I look at for weeks, and I'm
okay.
just like, what color is next, and where do I put it? Dear God, please somebody help me.
That's
So
like
yeah,
the infinite painter's curse is when is it
well, it's
finished?
like yeah, when is it finished? Well, it's usually finished when it's set around the house for like a month, and I haven't thought
Sure.
of the next thing to do to it. So that's usually when I say things are done is when I've just like give the piece room to breathe and myself
Mhm.
room to think and like just sort of process in the back of my mind. And if nothing's just like next, that's
Mhm.
when I'm like I should probably say I'm
Yeah.
done with this.
Sounds kind of improvisational.
Yeah, because every piece is different. You know, I don't know where it's going to stop,
Yeah.
but either time is going to tell me that it's done or I'm going to know that it's done, and it hasn't really been a whole lot in between. But that's also frustrating.
Yeah, you can't really get away from frustration. Or at least like discomfort, I should
There's
say.
discomfort.
It's not
Well,
always frustration, but it is kind of like, oh,
it,
effort.
because I know I want to do more,
Yeah.
but what is the next appropriate thing to do?
Yeah.
Because I don't want to do something just to be doing it in a way that isn't intentional or doesn't serve what I'm working on.
Hmm.
And
That's the worst.
yeah,
It really is when, yeah, you know, you don't have the next step yet. So you
but
just
you're
kind of,
just like raring
yeah,
to
but
go
you
for it.
want
You have the
it.
energy and you got all the tools and
The
you're there at the
clay.
easel and
Yeah.
something's got to give. But
That's when I have to go touch clay because,
yeah,
yeah, I'm like, maybe it's ADHD. I'm not really sure, but have to have
that
it.
energy's got to go somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
But that's why it's good to have multiple outlets.
precisely. Are we over time?
9 minutes left.
9 minutes.
9 minutes. So we can end this with one of. Let's get this one. Let's. This one I usually ask in the beginning, so we got to be a little concise with it.
Mm.
So where do you find Zen in your creative process?
Ooh.
And I hate that I have to say, "Hey, give me a quick answer to this one," because it's like legit my favorite question.
Mm. When I have a connection to every point of access to the work. the material, the emotional, the psychological, and just the pleasure of doing it, when all of those things are present in the moment, is when it's like, that's my heaven. So I guess that would be the best I could say and the most concise.
That's a really concise answer. I like that. That's a good one. And if you were to if you were to suggest like 1 to 3 people to sit in your seat, who
Ooh,
would
oh
they
my
be?
gosh. Oh, so many people. And maybe you've already talked to a lot of folks that I'm not aware of. Gosh, I'm a friends with a lot of artists. So I just want to tell you all my friends.
Right, that's
Um,
fine.
Beth Meadows,
Okay.
Lindsay Sharp. I think you could talk to any person in this building and they'd be happy to talk to you. Allison Merriweather, that's her studio there. Um, oh my god, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. Oh, you should probably talk to there's 2 people. Rubens Genov and his wife Lynn Genov. Lynn is a coworker of mine. Her drawings are really interesting. And Rubens teaches painting at UT,
Ooh.
and he is just a delight.
Would you recommend talking to them together?
Oh, that'd be interesting. Yeah, if they can find the time, then yeah.
That's usually the issue,
Yeah, that'd be
yeah.
amazing. They're both fantastic artists, and just yeah, I want to learn more about what they do, so it'd mostly be for my own
Well, that's
curiosity.
well. Then that's a wonderful suggestion, and I hope I can reach out to them and do such a thing.
Yeah.
So last thing, tell folks where to find you on the dreaded old internet.
Oh yes. Okay. Oh, and I need to plug something for West Fifth too.
Yes, please go right ahead.
All right. You can find me on Instagram at laurel.h.smith. I just got married last year, so I have a second last name now. Still getting used to it. I'm like, what's my name? And my website is just laurelhookersmith.com. The thing I want to plug for West Fifth Studios is, I don't know if you're going to have this podcast released by next Friday, but on the chance that you do.
I won't, but
okay.
I'll post it. So send me some info so I
sure,
can post
okay.
it.
We're having a fundraiser on Friday the 12th. It's going to be an open studios, and we're doing a silent disco. And you can find tickets at West Fifth Studios on Instagram. Fifth is spelled out. You can find tickets probably at the link in their bio. And it's going to be really fun. All of the proceeds go to rent stabilization for the artists here, because the landlord is having to raise the rent. And it will impact probably some of the full-time working artists here. So we're trying to do what we can.
Well, then that's an amazing cause, and I will definitely post that before I post this. So
cool. Okay.
Just yeah, we'll get that information out there, because this one's going to be in the can for a minute. So yeah.
Okay. Cool.
Everybody, this has been the latest episode of the KAAMP. That is the Knoxville Area Artist Network and Platform podcast thing. And if you want to support the show, the best way you can do that without money is to listen and share and rate and do all the things you're supposed to do as wonderful consumers of this media that costs nobody nothing. The other best way to support the show with money, buy my crazy ass artwork. It'd be really nice. And I would love for folks that hear my voice to also have things in their home that I made. And those 2 things would be great. Also, it's really cool to be on the Podnuga Network. And I'll talk at you next time. Thanks.
Thanks.